There are bridges, bridges in the sky, they are shining in the sun. They are stone and steel and wood and wire, they can change two things to one. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than able. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than able. There are canyons, they are yawning in the night. They are rank and bitter anger, and they are all devoid of light. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. Let us build a bridge of music, and let us cross it with a song. Let us span another canyon, let us right another wrong. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way.
We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Thank you, Bill Staines, for letting us use Bridges' song on Bridges programming, because it says pretty much what we're trying to get together. We want to bring people together, cross the bridges, and this Bridges programming is brought to you by the Human Renewable Energy Measure and
Renew the Earth.
Renew the Earth,
which is a not-for-profit, non-profit 501c3.
So you can donate to that.
That has a slogan of ambassadors for sustainability, but it's actually a lot more diverse than that. It's trying to share the things that have worked in the past and things that are being developed in the present and for the future that do the least amount of damage to our planet and to our the health of life on this planet.
And the point of the programming is bring together all humane things. My name is Jeff Bella. Next to me is Susan Coleman. On the phone is Dennis Carius. Good morning, Dennis.
Hello, hello.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. Good morning,
If anybody
Susan.
wants to call in, we'll have a call-in number, and we'll give that out in a minute so you can get your paper and pencil
And it
ready.
also runs by on our digital thing, the call-in number
The
regularly.
call-in number is
Goes through there. Well,
is
it goes through all the other things
is
first.
863.
There it is.
815 HERM.
Wait a minute. I think you said it wrong.
HREM. That's what it stands for. And if I don't get interrupted, I can even read it faster. So I just have to make sure. Dennis, you know the call-in number?
Oh, let me. I'll just look at the email I sent out yesterday.
81547.
I don't know if that's a 5, Jeff. I think it might be. 812.
812.
863-812-4736. Because
Yeah,
you're reading it backward, it looks like a 5.
I should take that on the
But
back
people who are watching the program,
863
812
812
4736.
47. So you can call in. And the point of this is we want to try to get a measurement out that every human being in the world, no matter where you are in the world, would have to work 1 hour a day or 1 day a week for their basic needs met, not their wants, based on energy units. Energy, how much food you eat, which is about 1 million units of food a year, 1 million units of water a year, and of course
your calories, not units.
Well, they're
calories.
units of energy.
Yeah,
And it's much easier if I can just explain
but
it.
you
They're
say
units of energy, not calories or a unit of energy.
right.
So but you can use it in watts or joules or whatever you want to measure it in. It can be converted to that, and it can never be changed because it's impossible to change measurements of energy units. You could change money, but you can't change energy units. So that's
Once
why
they're established.
Once we've established them, just like a
Right.
foot or a yard, everything has measurements or distance or time. We've established what they are so we can measure them. We don't have an established measurement for what a human being is worth in their lifetime, which is 80 years of life. And as we get older, it changes drastically on what we can do. And today, everything is about energy and renewable energy, and specifically, and we've been talking about this since 1968. And we're saying that renewable energy is better for the planet and human beings than fossil fuel for very, very many reasons. First of all, once you build renewable energy or be able to get it, it goes on gifts of nature or gifts of God forever. And you can then go ahead and have a better quality of life without working for it. In other words, once you build the physical structure to collect the energy that you have a brain to do, human beings figured out how to make solar panels, and make fire and chop wood, and we learn to do this, build cars and tools. Human beings do this where other animals don't, but we need to be able to convert that energy unit into the object of labor is to gain leisure for all humanity. And human beings also are renewable energy. So what happened is over the years, we realized that fossil fuel was a great thing, but it was hurting the planet. And also it was costing us back in the 70s a lot more than the average person could afford. And it was actually crippling our life work. In other words, it was taking so much of our life energy out working jobs to pay for the energy. So that's how we got involved with renewable energy. Not so much people cared about the climate. In essence, we also realized that it was damaging the climate. So we actually we realized it was doing damage to the ozone layer and create. Now, I'm not a scientist. I can't swear by it, but I'm taking the word of other people who study this. And when 10 out of when 99 professors who study climate change, I have to take their word for it that they tell me there's a problem.
That fossil fuels are contributing to climate change.
And anybody who studies
burning of them.
anything for a long period of time, I actually listen to them because they'll teach me something because they spent their life learning stuff, like anthropologists and different, even certain economists. I want to hear what they have to say and see if I understand it. And that's where we're coming from. And that's why we came up with this renewable energy measurement. That's a very important thing. Human renewable energy measurement. Okay, so today.
That is just to be applied to economics.
To be applied to the economic system,
right.
Because that's our problem right now. And the reason for the problems we're having in the climate is because people are so busy trying to make money, they don't care about what damage they're doing. And when we brought that out many, many years ago, the different power companies or the different like Exxon Mobile and British Petroleum, they didn't care how much damage they were doing because they were based on profit-making money, had no value on anything, but it looks like it had value because it's based on gold, silver, and money, but not on human life. And that's where the human renewable energy measurement comes from. It's based on human life and life on the planet, including all critters and all the atmosphere. So that's where we're here now doing this. We've been very much talking about this for years, and there's many people been trying to stop Mobile Exxon to at least come across with what the scientists are feeling is truth. So Exxon Mobile and other fossil fuel companies, and it's not really fossil fuel that people say, but whatever
It doesn't matter. That's the term that's used.
Extractive is,
sidetracked.
we're going to use the term fossil fuel, that it's damaging the ozone because it's a carbon. You take the carbon out of the earth and you burn it. You're damaging the atmosphere, and therefore we have climate. And then they say it's creating climate change, whether it is or not. That's not me to decide, but it is for the people who spent years of their lives studying it.
Lifetimes.
So now we have to go to,
and their conclusions are that it is damaging.
Now, if you want to look at what's going on in California and look at what's going on in the U.S. and around the world with sea rises, and it's displacing people and melting of glaciers. And
warming of the
oceans, which we can feel the effects of it right now. I mean,
and record temperatures on the East Coast.
It's now pretty obvious even to the layperson that we have a definite climate change happening now. And what happened is there's been private lawsuits against the major companies, but recently the lawsuits came out of the different states. There are many states now suing, and that's where the show's going to go.
Yeah,
so
right.
Susan's going to take it from here.
You're going way ahead of me because I
wanted to put in contact of the show, the context of the show.
Okay, let me just read the summary right off because that puts it in.
I just want to make sure Dennis gets
focus.
Are you watching the program yet or not, Dennis?
Oh yes.
You're able to see it now?
Okay, I'm going to
here
proceed.
it is.
We'll try to get on the show.
So we're talking about lawyers who have a moral compass and are not just in the work of doing law for the money and profit, but actually, and there are many of them. I'm not saying it's a majority or a minority. I have no idea, but some are coming forward and have come forward to protect life on Earth, and they are now focusing on big oil, what it's called, big oil, whatever. When I say they, I'm saying lawyers that have a moral compass. They wanted to take on big tobacco first, just to get the hang of it, taking on huge corporations with big bucks. That's very difficult to do, as we know.
I want to interject something. I want to interject something while you're saying this. When Clinton was in office, he had a group of 100 people come and have a think tank group, and they broke the 100 people down to groups of 10. Each 10 person had one leader or representative, and we all had our think tank about what was the most problem we had in our economic system and with our atmosphere. And each group broke away the breakaway sessions, and we came up with a conclusion. Every one of them came to the conclusion that it was oil companies that are denying and charging too much money for fuel, and also doing it because of profit and lying about climate change.
And this was what year?
This was when Bill Clinton was elected. So that's
the year.
20 some odd years ago. Okay. I forget the year. I don't remember.
Okay.
But it was a long time ago. And I was involved with that. And then the 10 people came together, and they had the 10 out of each group came together, and they had the
same
spokesman,
conclusion.
and they came to the same conclusion.
Did the oil
well, we
companies
all sat around for a luncheon, and then they had the speaker came out and said, well, we all agree it's big oil, but the first thing we're going to take down is going to be the tobacco companies. And we were there was almost a riot at the White House at that point because we were so annoyed that they didn't go right after the oil companies and they were going after tobacco. Well, they went after tobacco. So now you don't see any more tobacco advertised on television, and the tobacco companies have been not taken down. They're still strong in different countries.
They went to China.
They went to other
and
places
various other countries. Right?
And you should see. But meanwhile, the part I want to bring out is that it's taken this long for them to go after the oil companies, and the advertisements went over to drug companies, which are just as bad. Trying to make
those
money.
are the ads you see now.
The ads you see now. So it's all about the economy, people.
In
it's
general.
all about the economics. So while you're listening to our programming, we're going to try to take down and make the oil companies pay a number for the damage they've done. It's all about the economy again. All about that's what Clinton said. It's all about the economy, stupid. This is the problem we're running into, and you're going to hear this whole thing with what's going on about money and about taking down and changing, making sure that they pay for the damage they've done, about fraudulent acts.
But that isn't a complete picture.
Right.
Just paying for but that's a start.
It's a start.
And that's important
and
that this is
20 years later. Go ahead.
Okay, so now we're approximately 20 years later. It probably took about 10, 15 years for them to complete the whole cycle of punishing big tobacco.
Which never worked.
And it did to an extent. They paid billions of dollars out in damages to people who had lingering lawsuits, for health. They were lying to the customer about the damage that smoking would do to their health, and there were lots of class action suits that were never resolved but now it was possible to resolve them, and people did get compensation, or the families of people who had died got some compensation money. This is not a solution, but it's a start. So now they're taking on big oil. And so I'm saying here, this is when I feel respect for lawyers, at least the ones who are willing to spend a lifetime holding corporations accountable for lying, fraud, and general bad behavior. They step up and speak what's called truth to power. And I put power in quotes here because it's a paper tiger type of power that these corporations are hiding behind. It's like a mask, and it will eventually fail, and it will fall. But there are steps to this, and it takes, as I said, the commitment of a lifetime, of many lifetimes, Jeff and I and Dennis were all part of this too. We're putting huge efforts and sections of our lifetimes into trying to inform people about, put information forward that is not consistently being put forward in our normal news cycles, in our everyday news cycles. So here I found two articles in the New York Times doing some research about this. This, really will be a historic, in many ways, this litigation that was begun by Attorney General Eric T. Schneiderman, and he's the Attorney General of New York State. And he initiated officially this investigation and subpoenaed Exxon Mobile, demanding records, emails, and other documents back in November 2015. About November 5th, 2015 is when this article came out. So it's approximately 8 months ago. And when that came out, I must have been not focusing, or it wasn't, I didn't see this coverage. And now I'm glad that it was much more obvious, and I did pick up on it. So I went back and to check out how it all began. And I want to read some of this article that came out in 2015, just to give a sense of how they're trying to, form a ring around the company and try to find out what they knew, when they knew it, and what they were telling their investors, and whether it was misleading and could be considered fraud, which is a term that a company, if they're found to have been fraudulent in their dealings with their investors and stockholders, giving them the wrong impression of what the effects of burning fossil fuel and what the final impacts on the company would be, etc. The damage that was going to be done, the possible outcome of that, if they were ever held accountable, and with, and they were complicitous in suppressing information that would have made it clear to their investors and stockholders that this damage was happening and was going to continue to happen, that profit was their only, their guiding principle, and that they were actively standing in the way of the real science and the real information, so as to not alarm their investors and stockholders, and to continue to give them comfort that they were always going to get great returns and not to worry. But I'm going to read this article written by Justin Gillis and Clifford Krause that came out November 5th, 2015, titled Exxon Mobile Investigated for Possible Climate Change Lies by New York Attorney General. And that's New York Attorney General Eric T. Snyderman. And he came out, he was the first one. The New York Attorney General has begun an investigation of Exxon Mobile to determine whether the company lied to the public about risks of climate change, or to investors about how such risks might hurt the oil business. According to people with knowledge of the investigation, Attorney General Eric T. Snyderman issued a subpoena Wednesday evening to Exxon Mobil, demanding extensive financial records, emails, and other documents. The investigation focuses on whether statements the company made to investors about climate risks as recently as this year were consistent with the company's own long-running scientific research. The people said the inquiry would include a period of at least a decade during which ExxonMobil funded outside groups that sought to undermine climate science, even as its in-house scientists were outlining the potential consequences and uncertainties to company executives. So this is a very key paragraph here, that this inquiry includes a period of at least a decade during which ExxonMobil funded outside groups that sought to undermine climate science. And at the same time, their in-house scientists were outlining the potential consequences and uncertainties to the company executives. And this, having received for 12 years, the LAMP, which is the yearly publication of ExxonMobil to stockholders, because we own one stock, which was given to us as a gift, a joke at our wedding, because our friend knew that how impassioned we are about renewable energy, and he just wanted to be funny. But it turns out this has been very, very useful to get that publication, and they truly do to speak with a forked tongue it is like double language all the time. You are having to read what they're saying in this publication, and then also understand what you already know about how they're behaving and what they've been doing, and realize that they're speaking one way and they're doing another way. But it's very hard to read these publications for that reason. But I have gone back to it
because you have they take a little bit of truth
and then they spin it, and they don't even do it that well in a lot of it, because you find them contradicting themselves later on in the article. If anybody ever gets to the end of these pieces that they write, but maybe some people do. But I went back today and started reading the most recent one that we've received, and I will read some of it to you and show you what I found. But I'm going to go on with this. So, of course, Exxon Mobile says we unequivocally reject the allegations that Exxon Mobile has suppressed climate change research. And this is their spokesperson, Kenneth Cohen, Vice President for Public Affairs. And he said, adding that the company had funded mainstream climate science since the 1970s, had published dozens of scientific papers on the topic, and had disclosed climate risks to investors. Mr. Schneiderman's decision to scrutinize the fossil fuel companies may well open a new legal front in the climate change battle. The people with knowledge of the New York case also said on Thursday that in a separate inquiry, Peabody Energy, the nation's largest coal producer, has been under investigation by the Attorney General for 2 years over whether it properly disclosed financial risks related to climate change. The investigation was not previously reported and has not resulted in any charges or other legal action against Peabody. And their senior vice president, Vic Svec, S-V-E-C-K, stated, Peabody continues to work with the New York Attorney General's office regarding our disclosures, which have evolved over the years. So nothing is definitive there yet, but simultaneous with investigating Exxon Mobile, New York Attorney General Schneiderman has been investigating Peabody Energy, the coal producer. Okay, let me go on with this article. It says it better than I can paraphrase. The Exxon inquiry might expand further to encompass other oil companies, according to the people with knowledge of the case. And so on and on. The people spoke on the condition of anonymity, saying they were not authorized to speak publicly about investigations that could produce civil or criminal charges. The Martin Act, a New York state law, confers on the Attorney General broad powers to investigate financial fraud. And that's very important here, because fraud is what they are wanting to find that that Exxon Mobile has committed fraud. To date, lawsuits trying to hold fuel companies accountable for damage they are causing to the climate have failed in the courts, but most of these have been pursued by private plaintiffs. So this is the first time it's the Attorney General of a state. Attorney General for other states could join Mr. Schneiderman's efforts, bringing far greater investigative and legal resources to bear on the issue. Some experts see the potential for a legal assault on fossil fuel companies similar to the lawsuits against tobacco companies in recent decades, which cost those companies tens of billions of dollars in penalties. So, first off, they can see the possibility of, monies, many billions of dollars for damages. But also with this one, it's different than the tobacco companies. That was the tobacco was directly affecting individuals' health and causing cancer. This is not only affecting individuals who don't even choose to smoke. They are living in the atmosphere of fossil fuel burning on this planet and being affected everyone,
But sea
without
levels
even,
change.
but also breathing in the particulate matter from the burning of fuels in automobiles, breathing in the particulate matter from the refineries who burn coal and oil to make electricity. And this is the wait, I cannot
Okay, go
finish
ahead.
a statement
Go ahead.
without, that all these things, this is a much larger, this is the whole planet involved in this. And everyone who's being affected has not chosen to buy something at the store that specifically like cigarettes, that they haven't made some decision. We have to buy fuel for our cars. Yes, we've made that decision,
And
definitely, but
power plants,
but we
electricity.
cannot, get to our jobs unless you walk. So there's a trap here for everyone
built into
and
the economy.
built into the economy, and this is a huge thing. If there is a decision of fraudulent acts on the part of Exxon Mobile, and compensation, not only monetarily, but it's also going to make a statement about the science that has been repressed all these years and denigrated, with huge funds being given to individuals so that they will stand up and say that this is not true, that this is not happening, that this is a lie, that it's a fiction, that climate change is not a real, really happening, while we're slowly, being boiled here, on the East Coast.
I want to bring
but
something out. I need to interrupt.
Presently.
If you go on our website, you will see a video called "The Infinite Power of Texas." It talks about renewable energy. It talks about wind, sun, and biomass fuels. However, on the very end of that movie, at the end of that video, you will see an excerpt taken out of a movie from On Deadly Ground by Steven Seagal, where he gives a speech and he shows the damages fossil fuel and coal plants are doing to this planet. And I reckon it's only about maybe 3 minutes. And I recommend strongly you see that, because it's showing you exactly what and the problems we're running into. But the problem is the economic system that's created it. He didn't go into that, but he does go into it in part. And he was hoping that we get a responsible leadership. But since the economy controls the leadership and they control the people who are running the rules, it's going to be really difficult to do that. But at least we're moving forward. And that's the beautiful part about this article, is we are moving forward to it. People are starting to see the problem with the economy. People are dying, because of economy. But fossil fuel and energy has always been a major problem.
Well, it's also it's entrenched in the economics. The fossil fuel has enhanced all of our labor through the machines and the various equipment that just, we could say it displaces labor also, but the whole economic system is based on
enhance labor. It should enhance labor.
Right. It
should
be
make it easier for you, so human beings can work less and less of their life for the quality of life.
The same quality of life, or
with
better.
the fact that we have energy, but that's not been happening.
No.
We could now use renewable energy, and we could use that to enhance our life. So people can still make their billions and trillions of dollars, but every human being in the world should not have to work hard as an hour a day for their basic needs met, or a day a week for their basic needs met. Their wants, they have the right to work as hard as they want, or for the money involved, but no human being should ever have to work more than a day a week for their food and shelter and their water. And of course, education, that's terribly important, because the more you're educated, the better the whole society will be. And they stop trying to lie to us about, giving us information that is erroneous. So it's terribly important that we understand this. It's all about the economy, and that's what Clinton said. It's all about the economy, stupid. Yeah. That's what he meant. But no one picked that up, and he got it, because that's what they were trying to focus on. The oil companies, they realized the economy is controlling it all. And I'm sure if you sit down with Bill Clinton he would explain exactly what we're explaining to you. I've been giving you, I would bet my life on it.
Okay, let me get back to the article. Now, okay, we were talking about how this is very similar way that is being attempted to litigate against Exxon Mobile as was used against the tobacco companies. And it will be a long, long process because the tobacco company, they were found guilty in 2006. So, and if you're meeting with Clinton, it's at least a 15
year,
at least
20 year
15,
lead-in time.
right. So that litigation went on for quite a long time. This will go on for quite a long time.
But now we've learned.
But they've learned something about how to do it. Maybe it won't
the overall change in the system, because it's so obvious, it may go faster.
It may. And this is an article that's 8 months ago. And I'm then going to go to an article that is present, and you'll see the progress that's occurred between this in that 8 months. And so I'm going to read this, go on with this. Could open up litigation and settlements in the same way. Now, this kind of what's going on with the subpoena to Exxon Mobil could open up years of litigation and settlements in the same way that tobacco litigation did, also spearheaded by attorneys general. This is stated by Brandon L. Garrett, professor at the University of Virginia School of Law. Quote, in some ways, the theory is similar, that the public was misled about something dangerous to health. Whether the same smoking guns will emerge, we do not know yet. Okay, in the 1950s and 60s, tobacco companies financed internal research showing tobacco to be harmful and addictive. So they were doing research themselves and had independent scientists telling their executives that tobacco was harmful and addictive. But they, as a company, mounted public campaign that said otherwise and helped fund scientific research later shown to be dubious. In 2006, the companies were found guilty of, quote, a massive 50-year scheme to defraud the public. Okay, we've got a lot of similarity here between what big tobacco did and what big oil is doing, but at an even, I mean, it's a much, much larger impact what big oil is doing than I mean, just huge. It's planet wide, and
it has the whole atmosphere. It handles the water. Yes, it handles the air we breathe. Right. That is covering everything, right. Not just cigarettes. This is all fossil fuel, which we call fossil fuel. People argue with me the other day about what's fossil.
So the company did learn from what was happening to I'm saying. To big tobacco, that the Exxon Mobil did learn from what was going on there. And so then this article goes on to say the history at Exxon Mobil appears to differ in that the company published extensive research over decades that largely lined up with mainstream climatology. Thus, any potential fraud prosecution might depend on exactly how big a role the company executives can be shown to have played in directing campaigns of climate denial, usually by libertarian-leaning political groups. Well, and other groups too. I mean, they went to universities and paid scientists huge sums to deny climate change. There are ways to do an end run around this, and obviously they were saying one thing and behind the scenes funding denial of climate change and directing campaigns of climate denial, and saying to their, I mean, I can read in the most, one of these publications that came out last year, 2015, this message that they sent to their investors, how they comfort their investors, and I will read it. I hope I'll have time. For several years, advocacy groups, quote, with expertise in financial analysis have been warning that fossil fuel companies might be overvalued in the stock market, since the need to limit climate change might require that much of their oil, coal, and natural gas be left in the ground. So here you have another aspect of it, that all these investors, that all this product may not even be, they may not even be able to access it if the climate change, it has to essentially be limited.
Not used.
In order to limit the damages of climate change, they can't pull any more of this stuff out of the
They
ground.
probably have a balance, but they won't make the money that they want to make.
Of course they will, but the money they're making is obscene, and you could go into that at length too. That their money making is actually increasing with the temperature rise. You probably could have a graph that shows that they're making money, and it's climbing at the same rate as our temperature rise in general. In the where it's rising on this planet, some places it's getting colder, but a lot of places it's getting hotter. Let me go on with the article. For several years, the people with knowledge of the case say, excuse me, the Attorney General's investigation of Exxon Mobile began a year ago, so it's actually almost been going on for 2 years now, focusing initially on what the company had told investors about the risks that climate change might pose to its business. And that goes back to what I just read about leaving the oil, coal, and natural gas in the ground. News reporting in the last 8 months added impetus to the investigation. In February, the New York Times and other organizations reported that a Smithsonian researcher who had published papers questioning established climate science, Wai Hak Soon, had received extensive funds from fossil fuel companies, including Exxon Mobile, without disclosing them. That struck some experts as similar to the activities of tobacco companies. So they were paying, very high-profile scientists to question what was being said by 99% of the climate scientists. Amazing. More recently, reported ExxonMobil was well aware of the risks of climate change from its own scientific research and used that research in its long-term planning for activities like drilling in the Arctic. So while they're warming the climate, they're actually providing themselves with new real estate in which to drill for more oil.
Right.
So it's an amazing business. It's as it's destroying things behind it, it's actually advancing to other opportunities that it's creating by the heating up of the planet, so that they can then even burn more of this. I don't even know how to express it. It's so diabolical in a lot of ways, insidious. So anyway, even as it funded groups in the 1990s to the mid-2000s that denied serious climate risks. Okay, so they're definitely not able to hide what they've been doing, and more of it is coming out. Mr. Cohen, their spokesperson at Exxon, said Thursday that the company had made common cause with such groups, largely because it agreed with them on the policy of keeping the United States out of a global climate treaty called the Kyoto Protocol, and they were successful in that. I think the United States was one of the major industrialized nations that did not sign the Kyoto Protocol
Because of the economic system controlling the political system.
Exactly. Quote, we stopped funding them in the middle part of the past decade. So I was trying to figure out what they meant, what the spokesperson for Exxon meant by that. Was that 2005, 1995? I don't know. But the middle of part of the past decade, because of a handful of them were making the uncertainty of the science their focal point. So he thought they were becoming a little too fanatical, I guess. quote, frankly, we made the call that we needed to back away from supporting the groups that were undercutting the actual risk of climate change. So it was becoming unpopular for them to be so obviously taking that stance. And we all lived through that. We all remember the way that they were behaving only, even less than 10 years
Right.
ago. And as I said, this is 2015. I have a publication of theirs which equivocates. Quote, we recognize the risk, Mr. Cohen added. He noted that Exxon Mobile, after an acquisition in 2009, had become the largest producer of natural gas in the United States. So they're switching over to natural gas now. They're kind of hedging their bets. Because natural gas creates far less carbon dioxide than coal when burned for electricity, the company expects it to be a prime beneficiary of President Obama's plan to limit emissions. So when they say a prime beneficiary, they're going for
the
government support for going and investing in natural gas. And on top of this, Exxon Mobil has also endorsed a tax on emissions as a way to further reduce climate risk. Well, they like the carbon tax scam, I call it, because it doesn't stop them from digging more wells and producing more, refining more product.
Creating money for the stockholders.
It doesn't stop any of that.
And the carbon tax, by the way, the individual is going to pay for, not the company.
Right, exactly. That's all passed on to the consumer. Okay, whether ExxonMobil began disclosing the business risks of climate change as soon as it understood them is likely to be a major focus of the New York case. The people with knowledge of the case said the Attorney General's investigators were pouring through the company's disclosure filings made since 1970, but were focusing in particular on recent statements to investors. And ExxonMobil has been disclosing such risks in recent years, but whether those disclosures were sufficient has been a matter of public debate. Last year, for example, the company warned investors of intensifying efforts by governments to limit emissions. Quote, these requirements could make our products more expensive. That's what they conclude, not that they need to consider, not even producing them for market. Lengthen project implementation times and reduce demand for hydrocarbons, as well as shift hydrocarbon demand toward relatively low carbon sources such as natural gas. Well, there are even lower carbon sources such as solar, wind, and biofuels.
Now again,
but they're not going to go there because that's going to cut into their bottom line. But this is how they comfort their investors. I'm almost done with the article. But in another recent report, ExxonMobil essentially ruled out the possibility that governments would adopt climate policies stringent enough to force it to leave its reserves in the ground, saying that rising population and global energy demand would prevent that. Quote, meeting these needs will require all economic energy sources, especially oil and natural gas. So they're saying that we are caught in a cycle that cannot be broken.
Right.
They are saying, okay, we got you. You can't change anything because the rising population, global energy demand will prevent any kind of stringent policies or climate policies on the part of any government.
Actually, they don't really got you, because if you continually warm the planet and you change the way we grow food, the disruption throughout the world,
population is
people are
going
to die.
Yes,
and therefore,
so
their
scenario that they're posing here is a scenario that serves their
economic purpose,
what they're doing, and is not a reality necessarily, because we don't know what the total impacts of climate change are going to be on population or global energy demand. People may not even be able to drive their cars in the future because of the contamination is just going to be too extreme. Okay, then I'm going to go to the most recent article now because I want you to hear what has happened since, and this is 8 months later. Okay, here we go, and this is written by, oh, I don't know, Mike Sagar, I think, Reuters. All right. In the 8 months since the New York Attorney General Eric T. Schneiderman announced the first investigation of Exxon Mobil over its past research statements about climate change, nearly 20 other state attorneys general have voiced their support. Okay, he's got 20 more attorneys general of different states. Exxon Mobil has increasingly been pushing back, fighting subpoenas in court and winning the support of lawmakers and friendly state attorneys general who have attacked the investigations
they're paying off the politicians.
Flashy political prosecutions dressed up as legal inquiries. So they're calling them names now. They're just calling names. The company, for example, filed a motion on Wednesday in federal court in Texas to block a demand for documents by the Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey, calling it a fishing expedition. So they are not even releasing their documents now because they can see the writing on the wall, essentially, and that's me speaking. Quote, the filing argued that Miss Healey was, quote, abusing the power of government, quote, to silence the company, and that she made statements in March with Mr. Schneiderman and other state law enforcement officials that suggest that she had already made up her mind about what her investigation would find. Well, can they read her mind? I don't know. On and on. Thursday, Exxon Mobil followed up with a petition in state court in Massachusetts asking the court to recuse Ms. Healey's office from pursuing the investigation because, quote, it is impermissibly biased, impermissibly, I love that, against the company. This is not permissible. We won't allow this. Impermissibly. Oh, I love it. Exxon Mobil also argued that that state law that Mrs. Healey relied on in her investigation had only a 4-year statute of limitations. So they're picking out every little thing that can stall the investigation. That sounds like desperation to me. Anyway, on and on. Quote, Alan T. Jeffers, a spokesman for the company, said, quote, the great irony here is that we've acknowledged the risks of climate change for more than a decade, have supported a carbon tax as the better policy option. Yeah, that's so that the consumer can pay more money for the damages that we're doing. And we're not going to stop pumping. No, we'll pay a tax. We'll just pass it on. That's fine. And spent more than $7 billion on research and technologies to reduce emissions. Yeah, we're trying to clean up our emissions, but they're not. They're not cleaned up. There's no such thing as clean coal. There's no. Don't stop the program, please. We'll go over time if we have to. A spokeswoman for Mrs. Healey said, quote, ExxonMobil's legal efforts are, quote, an unprecedented effort to limit the ability of state attorneys general to investigate fraud and unfair business practices, unquote. The law enforcement officials' actions also have been questioned more recently by a coalition of state attorneys general who called the investigations a grave mistake and raised substantial First Amendment concerns. So they're pulling out every possible blockage that they can. Okay, here's what Mr. Schneiderman, our Attorney General in New York State, is arguing. Quote, Mr. Schneiderman has consistently argued that he is trying to determine whether the company committed fraud by telling investors and consumers one thing, while its research showed the opposite. Quote, the First Amendment does not give any corporation the right to commit fraud, unquote. And so this is the point. It's not suppressing anybody's freedom of speech. It's just suppressing their ability to commit fraud.
Right.
Everything we've seen this week is ripped straight from the big tobacco playbook. And this is Mr. Saufer. Delay, deflect, and distract from any serious investigation into potential fraud or corporate malfeasance. Mr. Schneiderman has called the pushback from the company and its supporters First Amendment opportunism. State attorneys general have been at odds for over many issues, including blah, blah, blah. We don't want to get distracted by that. The letter this week from the coalition of conservative state attorneys general led by Luther Strange of Alabama stated that Mr. Schneiderman and his allies are, quote, using law enforcement authority to resolve public policy debate, unquote. It's not suited to the courts. It's not a public policy debate. It's actually it's much more profound, and it's potential fraud and corporate malfeasance. That's puts it wonderfully. Okay, let me get down here. During Exxon Mobil's years of funding organizations that undercut climate science, the Competitive Enterprise Institute received about $2 million from the company and its affiliate foundations, according to records obtained by Climate Investigation Center. So they fund institutes that that would speak against the science that was asserting that fossil fuel burning was affecting the climate. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Okay, that he speaks again. Here's another individual, Dean of the Yale Law School, Robert Post, rejected the notion that Exxon Mobil is being gagged by the state efforts. Quote, debate is not being suppressed in any way, he said during, adding that citing First Amendment rights has become, quote, a weapon in the arsenal of those who would seek to unravel the regulatory state, unquote. They're bringing it up because it sounds good. And okay, that article you can read in its entirety. It came out on August 16th, 2016. And oh no, that's not true. Well, maybe it is. Anyway, it came out this year in August. I think it was the 8th. And you can find it, I think, and it was published in the New York Times. I'm just going to read to you and this is the publication of Exxon Mobil, came out in 2015, what they say. Commitment to climate change research. This is what they're saying to their investors. Exxon Mobil Corporation believes that climate change is a serious issue requiring research for solutions and effective policies that balance society's need for energy and environmental protection. As such, company scientists have been studying climate science for more than 3 decades. Exxon Mobil advocates policy options that ensure a uniform and predictable cost of carbon, allow market prices to drive solutions, maximize transparency, reduce administrative complexity, promote global participation, and are easily adjusted to future developments in climate science and policy impacts. Since 2009, Exxon Mobil has supported a revenue-neutral carbon tax as the most effective and efficient and effective way for policymakers to put a price on carbon emissions. Putting a price on carbon emissions does not solve the problem. The problem is the emissions themselves, and that they are continuing and not being replaced with renewable energy alternatives. They have not changed their stripes. They're just once again asserting, this is what we want to have uniform and predictable carbon costs. Allow market prices to drive the solutions. They want the economy to drive this like it's been driving it everyone over the cliff for the last 100
And
years.
that takes us to our out song. Thank you very much for listening.
And we know that's dangerous.
A dirty little war breaks out somewhere across the sea, and suddenly the price of oil goes up. Your neighbor's out of work because they closed the factory. You try to stretch your paycheck, but it's never quite enough. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. Fossil fuel affects our lives like ripples on a lake. Cars and farms and factories and trucks. Supplies go down and prices soar, our futures are at stake. And when it's gone, it won't come back, and we'll be out of luck. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from corn and grass and trees. Even trash converts to biofuels. Break loose from the stranglehold of oil companies. Renewables can fuel the world. We're here to spread the news. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.